if you've listened to this podcast long enough and listened to enough episodes, you'll hear me talk about the creation process. Now, the creation process is, in my opinion, the kind of like the baseline for why we exist as human beings. So, if you've if you followed me at all, or if you've listened to any of the podcasts, or maybe read my blogs on the website innerwealthglobal.com, or maybe you've read my book, or anything, follow me on social media, you'll know that I'm a very spiritual human being, very spiritual person. Now, when I say that, what I mean is I don't believe that we're humans having a spiritual experience. I do believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I don't believe that there's a coincidence or a mistake in life, in the universe. I don't believe that life or God or the universe or whatever source, energy, I don't care I'm a non-denominational spiritualist. I don't believe there are any coincidences or any mistakes in the world. And I do believe that, people are their own heroes, their own villains, and their own victims. And we have chosen, we're living a life that is purposeful and meaningful. Even the negative things, the things that we deem as negative, I believe they serve a higher purpose to help us evolve and help us grow. And although that may sound like, and I'm just painting everything with butterflies and roses and unicorns and shit. But I was sitting in a group every once a month. There's a group of us that get together and just talk about, philosophy and life and manifestation, or I hate that word, but we talk about deep spiritual philosophy. And what we talk about is that there are no negative manifestations. And I don't love that word. I think it's overused, but there are no negative manifestations. Everything serves a higher purpose, and everything serves to elevate and evolve and to increase your capacity to recognize that you are a divine, spiritual, blessed, infinite, eternal, powerful, abundant soul having a human experience. And that's why I say it's a spiritual being living a human experience instead of a human having a spiritual experience. So anyway, when I think about the creation process, I think that's what we're here to learn as, in this human form. So we have a mind, we have a body, but we are in a soul. We are the consciousness. We are the awareness that is looking through these eyes. And we are the awareness that's experiencing sensory input, taste, touch, feel, you smell. We are the awareness. We are the consciousness within that's experiencing everything that's going on in the world. But we are the awareness. We are not the mind and the body. And this is an important, this is why, your stories and your beliefs are so impactful in your life, is because you're making up through your stories and through your beliefs, you're making up what you will experience in the world. And you can experience whatever you want in the world. And you experience that through your beliefs and your stories. And now over the course of 51 years, as my stories and my beliefs have shifted, so has the entire quality of my life and quality of my consciousness and quality of everything around me. Because whatever you believe is true for you. And whatever story you're telling yourself is true for you. And whatever you're expecting, you will get. Whether it be positive or negative, even though there are no negatives. You're just always in the act of creating through your beliefs, through your stories, through your thoughts, through your emotions. You're just always in creation mode. And some people are creating what they want, and some people are creating what they don't want. When someone's creating what they don't want, I call that survival mode. So there's survival mode and there's creation mode. But when someone continues to create what they don't want, it's survival mode. And it's only when you learn the creation process and learn how to harness it and utilize it that you actually start to create what you want in the world instead of what you don't want. And what you see is there's probably 5% of less of people that are creating what they want, and we call those people the haves. And there's 95% of people who are creating what they don't want. We call those people the have-nots. And the have-nots have demonized the haves. But what the haves have done is learned how to utilize and harness the creation process. And it's a simple but not easy process. And there's 3 steps. There's getting really, really clear about what you want. There's becoming certain that you can have it. And there's remaining committed to the process and receiving when it shows up, taking inspired action and receiving when it shows up. And if you utilize that process, and if you get really in tune with that process, you are always creating, whether it's what you want or what you don't want. Clarity, certainty, and commitment. And I've done multiple episodes on this simple but not easy process. And it's easy when you start to trust it, but it's not easy when you don't trust the process. I've done multiple episodes. Today, I want to dive just another level deeper. Now, this is going to use the same exact process, clarity, certainty, and commitment, but I want to dive one layer deeper and start to help you understand, like, especially that certainty portion. Because, I run into a lot of, in the entrepreneur space, there are entrepreneurs who understand the woo-woo and the woo and the mystical, and there are entrepreneurs who don't. Now, here's the difference. Here's this strange phenomenon is there are entrepreneurs who don't believe in the woo and the mystical, but they just call that mindset. They don't believe in the woo and the mystical, but they do believe in mindset. And what they don't realize, it's the same fucking thing. It's the same thing. Mindset is woo. But it sounds tougher and it sounds more, I don't know, physical world to call it mindset instead of what it really is. And it's like a form of mysticism. Your thoughts are creating your reality. Your thoughts and your beliefs and your stories are literally creating the experience that you have in life. And your thoughts and your beliefs and your stories and your emotions and what's going on inside of your body is either creating what you want or what you don't want. And you can either call it like mysticism or mindset. It doesn't matter. It's the same fucking thing. And it's just the creation process. And I want to dive a little deeper and talk about clarity, certainty, and commitment. But I want to give you a little more depth of understanding, especially the certain part, the certainty part. Okay. So listen, 5 things that I want to dive into here. And I want you here's my experience. Let me back up for a second. Here's my experience. Everything that's ever showed up in my life has been when these 5 things have been in alignment. Okay. Let me throw it through that frame, and maybe you'll see how true this is for you too. Okay. But this is what's been true for me for 51 years. When I've gotten what I've wanted, and when I've gotten what I didn't want, it was the same thing. But whenever I've gotten what I wanted, these 5 things were true. Number 1 is I got really, really clear about what I actually wanted to experience in the world. Okay. One time, my wife, Angie, and I, we were in Maryland in our townhome in our first house. We've owned 3 homes together, 3 private residences. And we were in our townhome shortly after we got together. And And I remember having a discussion, and I was sitting on the edge of the bed and she was laying in bed, and she said, you know what, Mike, it would be really, really neat if we like took our little family and we went like, got away from the East Coast, and we just focused on our little family for a little while, because it was like holiday time. And, she lived in Alexandria, or she was from Alexandria, Virginia, and I was from Baltimore. And so we were driving back and forth, and we went through one holiday season like that. And she was like, this is crap. And like, wouldn't it be really cool if we just moved like somewhere else and just focused on our little family? And I said, hey, that would be cool. I would love that. I love moving, and that would be a lot of fun. And literally, like the next week, and I mean, literally, I am not exaggerating. Literally, the next week, we got called into a conference room at my work office, and they told us that they were shutting down that field office, and they were moving the field office to Beaverton, Oregon, home base, Beaverton, Oregon, and a few of us were going to be invited to move out there, and I was one of them. And a couple months later, we were living in Portland, Oregon. And we just got really clear that we were ready to move. It was a pretty simple process. And I also remember when I was a plant manager in a Fortune 500 company, in one of the plants in a Fortune 500 company. And I remember when my wife said this, like something similar. She said, hey, the girls are getting ready to go into middle school, and we don't want to live in Portland for the rest of our life. No disrespect, Portland. It's just, it's a beautiful place to visit. We lived there for 10 years, and the rain just got a little tired for us. And a beautiful place to visit, great place to raise a family. But the rain just literally, it didn't do well for our overall quality of life. Anyway, she said, if we're going to move, we should move before the girls go into middle school. And the very next year, the girls are going to be going into middle school. And I mean, almost like magic, my office phone started ringing with recruiters wanting me to come and manage their operation. Or, and I went and interviewed in New Hampshire, and I went and interviewed in Southern California, and I went and interviewed in Chicago, and here in St. Louis. I interviewed all over the United States, and we had the pick of where we wanted to go. But it came from like a simple thought that, hey, let's move. We are ready to move. We were prepared to move. And almost like clockwork, the phone started ringing. And maybe you've heard of these things before, where you wanted to hear a song, and suddenly you turn on the radio or whatever, and there it is. It's the same thing. You got clear about what you wanted, and then you didn't hold any internal resistance to actually getting what you want. And that's what we're going to talk about in the certainty part. So that's step one, right? That's the clarity part, is getting really clear about what you want. And you'll see, if you look back at the history of your life, whatever you've gotten really clear about, whether you wanted it or not, if you got clear that you didn't want it, it was just like getting clear that you did want it. Your mind knows no difference. Like life, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It knows no difference between getting clear about what you want and getting clear about what you don't want. It's going to bring it to you. When you get clear about what you don't want, don't be surprised when it shows up. So get clear about what you want. And this is why harnessing the creation process is so critical. This is how you become a have instead of a have not, is get clear about what you want. And most people don't have what they want because they don't know what they want, but they do know what they don't want. And that's why it keeps showing up over and over and over and over, because they're clear about what they want or don't want instead of what they want. And it keeps showing up. That's the clarity portion. And this is simple, but not easy. When we have our workshops, Choose Your Destiny workshops, We spend a full day just reigniting people's dream, the ability to dream and their imagination and their ability to see beyond their current circumstances into something more powerful, into something more inspirational, into something that's more like aligned with what they want instead of what they don't want. And you'd be surprised how many people struggle to actually dream or imagine that they could have something better than they have today, because they're used to surviving. They're used to waking up to avoid what they don't want. And probably at a young age, they were convinced by somebody or told or taught to stop dreaming and be realistic and practical. And being realistic and practical is just another way to say, stay in survival mode. It's the dreamers who accomplish big things and shift from have-nots to haves. The dreamers, not the practical people or the realistic people. Now we get into the certainty portion. Okay, that's the clarity portion. Now we're getting into the certainty portion. The second piece that falls into a line that is in alignment. Whenever I've gotten anything that I've wanted, whatever I've wanted, the second is that I believed I could have it. There was not a shred of doubt left in me that I could have it. I had built belief by letting go of doubt. And whenever I believe that I can have something without any shred of doubt, it'll show up. Believe, understand what you want, believe that you can have it, and you knock this shit out of the park. Unless, and now we're moving on to the third one, unless you feel like you need it. Let me dive into this one a little deeper. You need oxygen, water, nutrition, some exercise, some rest, maybe an environmentally controlled area. Maybe it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit, something to sustain, your basic needs and your basic functions. Oxygen, water, nutrition, exercise, rest. That the acronym is OWNER. It's a wonderful acronym. Oxygen, water, nutrition, exercise, and rest, OWNER, and maybe some environmental control around you so that you actually you're safe, physically safe. That's what you need to survive. Those are the primary elements. Those are what you need. Everything else is a want. But so often on this entrepreneurial adventure, on this creation adventure, we want something and we make it a need. And now we obsess over it. And it's like our life depends on it. And it puts us into survival mode. And when you go into survival mode and you obsess over a want, it's like it just moves farther away from you. Have you ever noticed that? When you make a want a need and start to obsess over it, now your every waking second is spent obsessing about it. It moves farther away from you. Because I don't know if you've ever been to sales training before, but there's a thing called commission breath. And people can smell commission breath. And when the salesman is pushy and the salesman is trying to needs the sale to take care of their bank account, people can smell that shit and run away from it. It's commission breath. They need the sale. But when you want the sale and you just show up to serve, you typically get the sale. But when you need the sale, the prospects always run away because they can smell that obsession. So when your want becomes a need, you're going to struggle. So you get clear about what you want to experience. Number 2 is you can believe that you can have it. Make sure that your want is not a need. And this one sounds similar, but it's a little different. Number 4 is that you know that you can live without it. It's like there's certainty in you that you're okay without it. Not just that it's not a need, but If it doesn't show up, you're okay. You're not attached to it. Your life doesn't depend on it. You'll be okay with it or without it. Your survival. If you feel like you're not going to be okay without it, you're in survival mode. You're not in creation mode. You're in survival mode. You've put yourself there artificially because you only need oxygen, water, nutrition, exercise, rest, and some shelter. So if you get clear about what you want, you believe you can have it, and you like the obsession isn't there, and you recognize it's a want, not a need, but you feel like you can't live without it. And you like the quality of your life goes down. It's called lack. You're living from lack. You're living from something that where your life isn't okay now, and you're trying to fix an internal conflict through this thing. And if any part of your creation is about filling an internal gap, it comes from lack, and it means that you feel like you won't be okay without it. And that's just another form of survival mode. The whole point of all of this is to shift from survival mode into creation mode, because that's the only place that you're going to show up as a have and not a have not. Please understand. Get clear about what you want to experience. Believe that you can have it. Make sure you honor it as a want and not a need. Let go of your identification and your quality of life as being dependent on this thing, and like let go and be okay without it. And from there, be ready to receive it, because it's just a matter of time. And you would be surprised how many people get exactly what they want, but they just won't take delivery. It's like you go in, you want a car, and you tell a salesperson that you want a specific car, and the salesperson says, well, that's impossible. That's a special order. It's like, well, then, but I'm not going to order it. I'm just going to wait for it to show up. A friend of mine has an awesome story. He bought a $150,000 race car, and he went and contacted a bunch of dealerships and said, here's the car I want, like the exact specs, but I'm not going to order it. I want to drive it. I want to test drive it first to make sure I actually like want the car. But here's the car that I want to test drive. And they all told him that he was a lunatic, that the only way to test drive that, or the only way to drive that car was to test drive it. Or I'm sorry, to order it, and then you could drive it, but it was yours as soon as you ordered it. And he said, no, I'll test drive it first. And he said, here's the car I want. When it comes in, let me know. And they thought he was a lunatic. And a couple months later, he got a call on a Saturday morning, and they said, hey, somebody bought this car, and there's like 20 miles on it, and they had it in their garage, and they turned it back in. It wasn't what they wanted. So this car, the exact car that you wanted, and it sounds freaking crazy. It does. It sounds like you can't believe, you can't make this shit up. But the exact car you wanted is sitting in our dealership. Do you want to come and test drive it? And he said, I'll be there in an hour. And he got in his car, and he went to the dealership. He test drove the car, and he bought it. And it was the exact car that he wanted. And I am not exaggerating this, but he let go of the need for this car to show up. He didn't obsess about it. He knew what he wanted. He believed he could have it. He honored it as a want, but he didn't feel a sense of lack. And then when the phone rang, he just said yes, and he took receipt. But I have another friend that went through kind of the same ordeal, but when the car came available, he wouldn't take delivery. He stopped just short. And you would be surprised at how many people, like when it would have been the same as if Angie and I, my wife Angie and I said we wanted to move, and then an opportunity came available and we said no. Like, you're going to get what you want. The question is, are you ready to receive it? And look, of course, there's some action involved in this. You've got to do something. You've got to make a call. You've got to pick up the phone. You've got whatever. There's some action. Maybe you've got to make a podcast, to fill up your mastermind, or maybe you have to have a Choose Your Destiny workshop. You got to do something. You got to take some action in this world, but it's not obsessive, lack-based, strugglicious, frustrated, angry, obsessive action. It's just inspired action that feels good, that moves you towards in the direction of what you're actually looking to create in your life. But the last step is to receive. Because if you don't receive, all that work that you did is for nothing. Now, this sounds woo-woo as shit, but it's just mindset. That's all it is. It's just basic mindset. If you decide that you want something, but then you go into freaking hyperdrive and like you're working obsessively, and now there's a lot of emotion involved and angry and you're getting frustrated, it's because you don't believe that it's possible. But if you get clear about what you want, and then the quality of your life goes down because now there's a missing piece in your life, that's coming at this thing from lack. That's not creation mode. That's survival mode. You've literally just put yourself into artificial, premature survival mode, because the only thing you need, oxygen, water, nutrition, exercise, rest, and maybe a little shelter. And we put ourselves into survival mode for no reason. And then we look at the people that aren't in survival mode and we call them haves, and we think they're the people that are destroying the world because they know how to create what they want. And the 95% who know how to create what they don't want blame the people who know how to create what they want, and demonize and villainize those people instead of just learning the creation process and learning that as soon as you get clear about what you want, believe you can have it. Make sure you honor it as a want and not a need. Make sure it's not coming from a place of lack and you're going to be okay with it or without it. And then when it shows up, just be willing to receive. When you honor this process, you'll see that every circumstance in your life will change. And then you'll become a have. And you'll see that it was always within your power to shift every circumstance in your life. Listen, this creation process is very, very simple. It's not easy, because it requires a lot of trust. It requires a lot of belief. It requires a lot of confidence. It requires the willingness to be okay in the unknown. And it's a willingness to trust what you can't see and what you can't prove. And not everybody's willing to do that. But when you do, you'll see that you'll shift from survival mode to creation mode. And you'll see, just like frickin' the Wizard of Oz, the power was within you all the time. You just didn't trust it and you just didn't believe it. The question is, do you want to believe it? Are you willing to believe it? And are you willing to receive anything that you actually say you want in this lifetime?